He is truly someone who needs no introduction. His career spans over 50 years, talking with world leaders and history makers, living legends from sports to the arts, the king of talk. Of course, I'm talking about Larry King, our guest on this special edition of my new show. Let's go meet Larry. Well, Larry, thank you so much for being here with us today.
My pleasure, Deborah.
We're really excited to have you on our show.
Well, anytime I come to Florida, it's like coming home. I started here. And
yes, you did, in Miami.
Special place in my heart for the tropics.
I want to talk about those beginning years. You know, 50 years of interviewing people and listening to their stories, and today we want to hear yours.
Turn the tables.
We're turning the tables, exactly. And I'm very excited to have you in Florida because I know that you're going to be going to the Kravis Center as well. So that will kind of turn the tables.
I'm looking forward to that. I hear it's a beautiful theater.
It's a beautiful theater.
It's tomorrow night, and I've got a lot of friends coming because I have a lot of people I know here. Our mutual friend Victor Moan's coming.
Exactly.
He just worked there.
Yes. So let's begin at the beginning.
Sure.
Let's begin at 50 years of interviewing people and to listening to their stories, and now we're going to hear yours. You were born in Brooklyn, and your parents were both immigrants. And at 44 years old, your dad passed away. I
was 9½. He was an immigrant from Austria. He was a gung-ho American. And when World War, he owned a little barn grill and never had any money. And when the war broke out, he tried to enlist, but they wouldn't take anyone over 40. So he loved America, so he got rid of the business. I don't know, he hardly got anything for it, and went to work in a defense plant building ships in Kearney, New Jersey. And it was me and my brother. They had lost a son before I was born.
Heartbreaking. Who
died of a burst appendix. He was 6, and then I was born like a year after he died. And I was very close to my dad, and one day he went to work and didn't come home, and the next day I was coming home from the library with a bunch of books and came to my apartment building in Brooklyn, and a cop came running down the stairs. I heard my mother crying, and this cop, my books all fell down. The cop picked me up, he took me in the squad car, we drove around, and he told me my father died. And I didn't cry, I didn't go to the funeral, I was very mad. I didn't understand what death was, and I was angry.
Yeah, 9½ to lose your dad.
But it changed my whole life. That I lost interest in school. And,
never finished high school?
I finished high school, but I just
Yeah.
did get out. Someone said I got out because my mother begged the dean, let him out. Where I was I skipped 3rd grade, went from 2nd grade to 4th grade, then I lost interest.
Yeah. How did that impact your life in the later years?
Well, I got, I was raised with a different view of death, and James Agee wrote a play called Dark at the Top of the Stairs about a boy who loses a parent at age 9½. It's very bewildering because you don't understand what it is. Right. I took it as leaving me.
Right, like he just disappeared.
I took it as desertion.
Right.
I was angry. We didn't go to the funeral, as I said. I was just angry. And but I think it also later on drove me. I had no particular talent. I wasn't interested in law. I was interested in politics just as because I love politics. But I must have had a good voice because people always used to tell me, you ought to be on the radio. And that's when I was 6 and 7. My father used to tell me.
Yeah.
He's going to be an announcer. So I started to listen to radio and ape radio shows. I would listen to The Shadow and then go in and sit The Shadow those and do all. I did all those things. And it's all I wanted to do, but when I got out of high school, didn't go to college, I helped my mother, and my brother was in college.
You guys had to go on welfare. I mean, it was a difficult time.
They call it relief.
Right.
But it was welfare. I was on for 2 years. New York City bought my first pair of glasses. They had to have wire rims. They couldn't give you frames. I never forgot that. But when my brother got out of college, he was able to go to work. So I went down to Miami to try to fulfill my dream. My uncle had a little bungalow apartment. His wife had died, my mother's sister. I stayed with him, knocked on doors. Rest is history.
Well, let's talk about May 1st, 1957, your first interview, how that all came about.
First day of my life. I discussed this in the act I do. I had knocked on doors and no station would listen to me, and this one station gave me a tryout about a microphone. I'd never talked into a mic. And they said, well, we like your voice, and you want it so much, it's half the game. So we have a lot of turnover here, and the first job that opens, you can have. I says, wow. So I hung around that station. I cleaned up, I watched people rip and read news, watched the disc jockeys work, and fascinated about a small station. And one day the general manager came in, and this guy named Tom Baer had quit. He made $55 a week, and his alimony was $60. So he figured he's never going to catch up. So he quit, and I was going to get his shift starting Monday morning. And I would be on from 9 till noon, and then I'd do news and sports. We stayed there all day, and I just loved it. And I went on that first day. I'm ready to go on the air, and the general manager called me in and said, what name are you going to use? And I thought I was going to use Larry Zeiger, which was my name. But he said it was too ethnic, and people wouldn't know how to spell it, E-I or I-E, and you want to have them all. Now you'd keep Zeiger. And he had a newspaper over in the Miami Herald, and it was an ad for King's Wholesale Liquors, and he said, why not Larry King? And I said, okay. And I later legally changed it. That's an interesting process when you legally change. So I went to go on the air, and I'm sitting with my records, nervous, and the record starts to play, and nothing comes out. I lower the record, nothing. I'm scared. And I look at the clock, and it was like 4 minutes after 9. Haven't said anything. If you're listening at home, all you heard is a record fading and going.
Hard to imagine.
So I said to myself that I don't have the guts to do that. I have the desire, but I'm chicken. And the general manager kicked open the door to the studio, and all he said was, this is a communications business, damn it, communicate. I turned on the mic, and I did what I would do today. I said, good morning, my name is Larry King. That's the first time I've ever said that. I've just been given that name. I'm starting my career today, and I was nervous. And the general manager kicked open the door, and he said, communicate. So I better communicate. And what I learned that day, I was never again, ever nervous about anything in my life, because two things occurred that day. I'm honest with the audience. Okay? So they know it's my first day. So any goof I make,
they're going to give you a break.
This is his first day. In fact, someone asked me about that once, and said to me, well, what if you were at NBC walking down the hall, and someone grabbed you, handed you a piece of paper, sat you down, and said, Tom Brokaw's sick, you're on. I would have looked at the camera and said, I was walking down the hall, someone handed me a piece of paper. Said,
the honesty, the honesty.
You can't go wrong. You can't go wrong. If I throw the wrong cameras, you never did this before. So that I took that and always used it. There was never a reason to be nervous. And the old joke that it isn't brain surgery is true. What we are doing now is not brain surgery. Once you realize that, I have a total appreciation of it and a love for it. I love communicating, but I'm not saving a life.
And you don't have to try so hard.
You don't even think of trying.
Exactly.
I don't call it work.
Exactly.
I went to CNN or I went to the radio station.
Work?
Work, they're paying. The last time I worked was an assistant on a UPS truck. My uncle got me a job for United Parcel Service, and I would stand on the truck. We delivered all department store stuff in New York department stores. And I was a helper on the truck. I had my uniform. That I worked. Carrying up television sets up 4 stories. That's
physical
work.
labor.
Radio, TV, this is not work. This beats work.
Well,
so once I realized that, it was a breeze to me.
Well, I mean, we've enjoyed it. We've enjoyed your natural.
Well, if I could add to the enjoyment of people, that's what you want to do. I want to be able to communicate I didn't want to say to myself, I want to be famous or I want
Right.
to be rich. That's a byproduct. The first thing is to love what you're doing. We had a dinner with the Kings once at our house, and Jack Dorsey was there, the founder of Twitter. And I said, well, when you thought of Twitter, what were you thinking? He says, I was just thinking of an easy way for people to communicate. He worked for in the summer, he was going to school, for a dispatcher for a taxi company. And the way they would dispatch people to pick up someone is they type out things.
Right.
It was a brevity of words, maybe 100 words or less, telling the cab driver where to go. Go to 54th and 3rd, pick up this lady, take her here. And he thought,
Incredible.
why couldn't people do that? Okay,
Right.
He didn't think of money, he didn't think of fame, he thought of communicating.
Right.
I never thought that. So everything that came to me was a byproduct.
It's funny because a lot of people who have a dream or a vision, they say that they saw it. They saw the end product. They saw the end before they actually went through it.
Well, I didn't have
and
that.
You didn't have
I
that.
didn't see the end, but I knew I knew I wanted to be on television. I knew I wanted to write. I knew so I did columns for the Miami Herald and USA Today, and I knew I wanted television. I knew I didn't ever say I'd be in movies, but I was in 23 movies.
Right.
So fame brought that. I was very conscious of fame, but I never forgot where I came from.
Right.
I am still a Brooklyn kid. I left Brooklyn. Brooklyn never left me.
Well, they say you can take the boy out of Brooklyn, but you can't take Brooklyn out of the boy.
Correct. So I'm still, I'm 78 years old.
You look
and
great, by the way.
I wonder what I'm going to do next. What am I going to be when I grow up? Because I've never grown up. You know, you're still, if you're in this business,
Right.
you're still a kid. And anyone I've talked to or interviewed over the years, no matter how famous they've gotten, there's still that ingredient that is childlike. Anthony Quinn told me something I never forgot once. He says, we're making a movie, me and Paul Newman, called Hondo, I think it was, and we're Indians. Oh, Paul Newman's a blue-eyed Indian. And we're having a fight. And we're rolling down a hill. And we go back up to the top of the hill, the director says, do it again, and we're rolling down the hill. And the fourth time we're doing it, Paul Newman said to me, when we were 8 years old, we do this all day for nothing. We're children. We're play acting.
Right, so to do it because you love it, not because you want the byproduct
Correct.
of it. Yeah.
So there's byproducts.
Exactly. Well, you know, I used to go to Collins Avenue when I was a kid and go to Pumpernicks, and I was reading in your book how that special day when you were doing that mid-morning show, and I love that story. You're interviewing people coming off the streets, the waiter, anyone, and all of a sudden someone walks in and
Bobby
it's like,
Darin.
let's talk about that a little.
First, I couldn't plan that show. It was a coffee clot show, just whoever came in.
Right.
So we didn't have a producer. No one booked guests. And I would interview visiting firemen, waiters, businessmen, all off the top. It was an hour every day. I'd finish my disc jockey show at 9, drive up to Pumpernicks, and I was on from 10 to 11. It was a very successful restaurant, but mid-morning is when you
Right,
don't
the
do
off
business.
time.
Who's eating?
Right.
So they thought I'd draw crowds, and it really caught on that show. The Miami Herald gave it a write-up. But Darin walked in one day, and then later Jimmy Hoffa, Ed Sullivan, Danny Thomas, incredible. Governors of states.
This Miami was a hot spot right there.
Oh,
yeah.
was it? And Bobby was singing right across the street.
Right.
And he had insomnia, so he used to he was up early, up all night, he'd listen. So he thought he'd walk in. And at that time, Mac the Knife was the #1 song in America. And I put him on the air, and we spoke for an hour, interviewed him for an hour, and then we took a walk down Collins Avenue. And I was 24. And I guess Bobby was about the same age, maybe.
He knew he was sick then, right?
We had rickets as a kid, a weak heart. So I said to him, what's the rush? You know, he wanted everything yesterday.
Yeah.
And he said, well, I'm not going to make it past 40. I'm not going to, he died at 37. I'm not going to live past 40. So I want it all.
No.
Yes, I want it now. I never forgot that. I kept in touch with him. And he was an amazing performer. I went to see him. But that Pumpenix led to a night show.
Right,
a night show led to television. All of it swirled from that show.
And Gleason, he had a major impact on your
Well,
career.
Jackie came down to Miami in '61. By then I was doing night talk, I was doing television. And Jackie left New York and came down to Miami to broadcast in Miami Beach, and came by train. It was the Gleason Express, and instead of, you know, the sound the train makes, his train sounded, away we go, down to every, and we passed little cities in the middle of the night, and Jackie would go out in the back of the car, wave to everybody. That's where I met him.
Right.
And he'd heard about me, and they had a big dinner for him the next night, and I emceed the dinner. And then he used to call into my radio show. And he'd call in, and then sometimes he'd come on the radio. Then I had a television show Sunday nights called Miami Uncovered, in which the show had no time limit. David Susskind did a show like that in New York. I went on at 11, and whenever I thought the subject had been diluted, I stopped. So Gleason came. And first he came early, changed the furniture. We broke into the general manager's office. He got a different chair. He changed the lighting. He changed everything. Well, Jackie Gleason.
Yeah. And
we did till 5 in the morning. Now I did 6 hours, no script, no questions prepared. It's me and Jackie. And so we hit it off, and he became kind of a mentor. And when I switched from Channel 10 to a big weekend show on Channel 4, which was that was a big show. It was #3 in the market. I did the interviews. He did the promos. Even though it was with ABC station, he was
incredible.
Pal, I tell you, pal, and he got me Sinatra.
Why do you think he took you under his wing like that? What about you did he like so much?
He liked, one of the sweetest things in my life was the night before he died. His PR guy, Hank Meyer, called me, and he made a list of 10 or 12 people he wanted to say goodbye to. And I was one of them.
Oh.
I think he just thought I had talent, and he liked that I took risks. I never thought of a question. I never said to myself, is this a good question?
Right.
Should I ask this question? Am I out of line? Never meant to embarrass anyone, but I always tried to be, and he loved the curiosity. So, because he was curious. Jackie was curious about everything. Why? Why did they do that? Why did he do? And he saw that in me, because I was a why person from the book. I mean, I could do, with people like Gleason or Sinatra, people like that, who are worldly, who have Anthony Quinn, who have accomplished a lot, I could do hours. I could do Bill Clinton for a day. I'd never run out of questions.
Never intimidated by anything?
Oh, no. I never, the first time I was in the White House, intimidated. A little bit. First time Sinatra came to do my radio show, because Gleason set it up.
Well, he was known to be the tough guy then anyway.
Well,
so.
he wouldn't do interviews.
Right.
And this was a favor. And when he walked up the stairs, but that went away in a second, because I knew something early on. If you own the mic, you own the show. There's no reason for you to be nervous.
Right.
The guests might have to be nervous, but there's no reason for you to be nervous. You control the questions. See, I had, at the height, I was doing a newspaper column for USA Today every Monday. I was doing openings of movie theaters. I was appearing in movies. I was on CNN for an hour and radio for 5 hours. Okay.
So he was Sinatra, but you were still hot at that time, right?
Oh,
and
yeah.
still.
That meant if I slept 6 hours and I was on the air 6 hours, I pretty much controlled half my day. Once that light went on, it was mine. Now, the wonderful thing in life is you can't control what your wife is thinking, can't control your children if they're going to run out in the street, but when that light's on, you're in charge.
Control. Right.
And I sensed that. So there was absolutely no reason to be nervous. None. Scared
Not at
of
all.
what?
Even with Frank Sinatra.
Even at the White House.
Even at the White House.
It's still you.
Right.
It's your camera.
Exactly.
The president is your guest. I remember Barbara Bush got mad at me the first time I got to be dear friends with her when I didn't wear a jacket. I wore my suspenders. And she went, Larry, suspenders in the White House? But I didn't put on a jacket because that was my comfort zone, my show.
And they just loved you for being Larry with the suspenders
And they
and all.
liked, well, Peter Ustinov said, I like being interviewed by you because it makes me think about things I don't think about, which is what a good interview does.
Right.
If I can make you think about something you not think about, I'm going to get you to respond. The best example, if you're doing good, was Sinatra. Before I started interviewing Sinatra, his PR man said to me, you know, Frank doesn't do this, and he's doing it as a favor to Gleason, but I'm going to give you a tip. Do not ask him about his son's kidnapping.
Mm-hmm.
He won't talk about it, and he's liable to walk off, and this was live. So I'll honor that. Okay, hey, that's a rule, I accept the rule. In the middle of the interview, we get to discussing the press, and I said to him, I still remember this, the thing between you and the press, is it overblown, or were you ever bum-rapped? He said, well, it was probably overblown, but I was bum-rapped too. Take the kidnapping of my son.
Oh, so he brings it up, yeah.
I never mentioned it. He brought it up. He discussed the whole, how the press treated it and all that. I thought the PR guy would faint. At first he thought I brought it up. I never mentioned it.
He was so comfortable with you that he just
so
felt like he
then he
wanted
sent me a letter, which I have framed at the house, 3-paragraph letter of how you make the cameras disappear.
Right. And you do. I feel that way right now. I feel like there's no cameras here. It's
because
wonderful.
there's so you know, there was a great cartoon of in the New Yorker of brain surgery, in which the doctors have the brain covered and they're all hovering around the table, and one doctor says to the other, "It ain't television."
Right. 1985, CNN. That's where we really got to know you well.
Yeah, the world did. Yeah.
60,000 interviews. Now, I interviewed Regis, and I know he has a Guinness Book of World Record for the most time clocked on television, but that has to be, I mean, 60,000 interviews.
I think he has the record for the most time. I have the record for the host in the Guinness Book. It's the host of the same show at the same time on the same network, 25 and a half years.
But to think about 60,000 interviews and knowing
they weren't
that,
all at CNN. It's a total of 60,000.
Right. But knowing that, you know, certain ones stick out in your head, those are the ones, those landmark moments in your life that
there got to
you
be
remember.
so many of them, though. See, like before CNN, I did Martin Luther King. I did Kings. I did Sinatra before CNN. I did.
What was the
Malcolm
most unexpected thing that happened when you were on the air for you?
Oh, Brando kissing me. That was really out of nowhere. I loved Marlon, and when he kissed me on the lips, that was.
Tell the viewers about that. They may not know that story.
Well,
I know
we were
the story.
singing. The way it happened first was, I was in L.A. and the network called me up and said, "Guess what? Marlon Brando has agreed to do an interview with you." And this was like Monday. He's going to do it Friday night at his house.
Never does interviews.
Never. And he wants to talk to you first. Now, normally I didn't like that because I don't want to know too much about a guest. Right. So he says, they said, Marlon's going to call you. And when he calls you, make up to go see him. So now I'm back. I'm at the Beverly Wilshire Hotel. Phone rings. Hello, and there's that voice. He goes, Larry King, this is Marlon. And I actually said, Marlon who? And he just innocently said, Brando. And I said, well, it could have been Marlon Fitzwater, who was press secretary to the president. So we laughed. And he said, listen, let's have lunch. I'll send a car for you. Come up to the house. We'll have lunch before we do the thing Friday. Okay. So I go downstairs. I'm standing in front of the entrance. Up pulls a white Chevrolet, and it's Marlon. He's driving.
His car.
I get in the car, I'm in the front seat, and he said, I decided to pick you up, right? No security, no nothing. Now, he and I are driving around Beverly Hills.
Now, that's typical of him, right? That was very typical of him.
Never know what he's doing. And he says, you know songs? I said, yeah, I know songs. He says, okay, I'll do a line, you do a line, right? He started with, let's take a boat to Bermuda. He said that. I go, let's take a plane to St. Paul. Let's take a kayak to Quincy or Nyack. Let's get away from it all. Now we're driving around the streets. And we're driving up to his house, and he says, what are we going to talk about? I said, well, lots of things. I like to talk about acting. Acting is easy. I don't want to talk about acting. I said, well, got to talk about, acting is easy. I said, acting is easy? He says, I'll prove it to you. So he pulls over the side of the road. He fakes like he takes a phone call. He goes, what? And he says to me, your brother died. And I went, what? And he goes, see that what? That's an Academy Award what? That's a great what? If we could open the top of this car put a camera in, dolly in on your face. When
Right.
you do what, I'll get you nominated. It was easy. Acting's easy. Life is difficult. Acting's easy. So he says, I don't want to act anymore. He said, if someone would just pull up to my house twice a year and leave $5 million, I'll never act again. He said, I'd rather read the play. I'd rather read Shakespeare than perform them.
Unlike like Al Pacino, who was...
Yeah, now a lot of actors got mad at him
Right.
for saying that because he was technically putting down
Right,
his
the art.
and he never wanted to promo anything. He wouldn't show scenes from Donnie Brasco. He wouldn't show scenes from the movie he made with Johnny Depp, where Don Juan DeMarco, where he was a psychiatrist.
Right, right.
No, I don't want to look at that. When we showed a scene, he wouldn't even look. You know, he just was. For that, I got him to talk about acting. And I remember when he said to play a drunk. I said, how do you play a drunk? And he just became drunk. He just went, and he almost fell off the seat. And his body movements were so graceful. You know, he was a dancer. So even when he
I didn't know that he was a dancer.
He came to New York as a dancer from Omaha. And he was always, despite the weight, very light on his feet. He moved through a room.
Right, he flowed. Now, this time, talk about moving through the room, we are almost out of time, which is really...
Debra, you've just touched the career.
Which is really upsetting to me, because you're going to have to come back and see me.
I will be happy. I love coming to Florida. I'll be happy to do this. Why don't you come and see me?
I will come and see you. I will.
You
You're going to be doing a one-man show. Tell us a little bit about that.
I come on stage. It's about 90 minutes. I tell stories. They're funny stories. You'll see some backdrops on the screen. And they're stories of things that happened to me as a kid in Brooklyn. Things
and you make them laugh. I know you make them laugh.
Oh, yeah. We make them. Well, you would have bet that I'd never be a hit when you hear these stories. And then I tell stories about things that happen off the air on radio and CNN. Tell some jokes, tell some stories. And have a lot. I've never had anyone say we didn't have a good time.
Well, I can tell you, I never used a note in this conversation. I didn't have to say a word. You made my, if every interview was this easy, I would be saying the same things that you have said all these years.
Debra was wonderful. Keep at it, because there's no more fun than asking questions. I think it's the most fun in the world. I love making people laugh.
Because everybody has a story. Everybody has a story. And I enjoyed listening to part of yours. Thank you so
Debra.
much for being with us.
I like the bracelet.
Thank you very much. I like the suspenders. Thanks for being with us, Larry.
Thank you, darling.
Have a great day. Thank you for watching. I hope you enjoyed the show. We look forward to seeing you next time. I'm Debra Tornabin.